Hello, and welcome back to the Rich Revolutionaries podcast. Today, we are concluding part 4 of the Power Saga with staying power. Today is all about regenerative leadership, truth-telling, and power rooted in unconditional love. We're going to explore how we can hold tension long enough for something new to take form. And what I want you to be able to answer by the end of this episode is, what does power look like when it's no longer performative, unconscious, or extractive? So let's dive in. The focal point of this conversation really lies within creating coherence. Coherence being there is a harmonious thread woven through all of the aspects of a system that maintains the integrity of its wholeness, rather than incoherence, where each part of the system is segregated and separated as an isolated silo, right? That doesn't function harmoniously with the whole, right? There's this like crunchiness that can come up both systemically, obviously, which we'll get into, but also relationally, which I want to bring that focus back into the micro level, the relationship level. First, starting with ourselves, and then how we can ripple out that coherence from all of the different parts of ourselves, right? Because we're multiple, into holding that same frequency, that energy, that relationship dynamic within all of our relations, right? Like we have relationships with our parents, our partners, our work, our business, but also with different aspects of life. Like we have a relationship to the government, we have a relationship to nature, and all of these different parts of the whole. So I like to look at coherence through the lens of allowing the full range of our emotional expression. And in that, when we're switching from what the overculture conditions, emotional suppression, staying on the surface of relating from these social scripts, and we actually deepen into our own emotional bodies, into acceptance of the range of our expression, then we get to alchemize our emotions as fuel to create new possibilities, create different types of relationship dynamics, create new structures and systems that we operate within our businesses, within our families, within our finances, within how communities and societies and civilizations are structured, right? Zooming out. And so with this emotional alchemy aspect, I want to kind of break it into two parts for us here, where there's the expression and the containment, two sides of the same coin. So our emotions, like if we're angry, like really getting into it, that's the expression. And being mindful not to be projecting that expression onto others. We can fully be rooted in ourselves and expressing our emotions. And then when the conversation is moving, right, because it's a dynamic conversation flow to the other person, there's a containment, right? We're able to hold ourselves in our emotional expression. We talked about this a little bit in previous episodes of the Power Saga with the theme of empowered vulnerability, right? It's differentiating, sharing our story powerfully versus trauma dumping when we haven't yet gone through this process of emotional alchemy for ourselves. So when I share this, notice like how you present on this range, within the relationship with yourself. How emotionally expressed do you feel like you are? versus suppressed? How emotionally contained do you feel like you are versus leaky or collapsed? And I want to bring an example that's like so common from different women's circles that I've been a part of over the years, where I've seen leaders get this wrong is when a emotionally intense or potent expression is shared in the group. As a leader, it's our role to hold the space for that, right? We are creating a container that's not within our own selves, right? We're not internalizing everything. It's holding a space that's created by our intention, by emitting a certain frequency, by the support that we bring in, and by accounting for all of the different energies that are coming into this space and how we can meet that with artful skill, right? Space holding is a skill. And so, okay, for example, when I've been in a women's circle and there's been stories of abuse that are shared, and the leaders have also experienced similar, parallel, tangent types of abuse. I've seen it where the attention pulls away from the initial participant and into the leader, then being activated in their pain body to share and without being conscious of it, right? Like the attention goes on them, and then it's not so much about the container, it's more about them and their expression. And maybe the dynamic shifts to the container holding them, right? We want that coherence and that reciprocity with giving and receiving, but there's a subtle difference and nuance when someone is sharing to get attention and in this like performative vulnerability, masked authenticity expression versus empowered vulnerability, where there is expression that can then shift to containment because they've already gone through the layers of processing their own experiences so that the emotional charge gets to be shared, but it's not discharged onto the participants, or it isn't occupying all of the space in the space. And if you've been part of dynamics like this, I'm sure this can bring up so many memories for you. So, what happens in a dynamic of leadership like this, of, let's say, a lack of containment, then the loop of someone's story being shared, of them having the opportunity to be witnessed and to integrate their experience by being held in that container of unconditional love without trying to be fixed or without trying to distract attention away from what's being shared from a place of discomfort, then that gets to complete a energetic cycle, right? It gets to resolve a layer of the experience. And the more that we're able to share in spaces that are actually able to hold us and meet us at our depth and our experience, rather than ping-ponging attention, then those stories get to be assigned a different meaning, right? This is where we're starting to integrate the experience, where we're moving through the karmic loop that created that dynamic in the first place of being a survivor of abuse. And coming into, okay, this is an experience that I've had, and rather than solidifying in this rigid ego structure of defending the wound, then the polarity of like, okay, what is the meaning that I'm choosing to make from this shifts from I am a victim of this, or I am rigid and not letting people into my heart anymore, which is still like a different polarity expression of victim, right? Into, okay, like, how do I serve from this? How do I come into more of my soul gift expression from this experience? Okay, I want to kind of shift the frame of this too, of like what happens when a leader isn't sharing their expression and is overly contained into the realm of suppression. So I've been in other women's circles. Your girl has been to a lot of women's circles as someone who is very community oriented. I I love a good gathering. And so I've felt like the pull, the resonance to show up to certain spaces. I remember there was one specifically that was like a shamanic experience around embodying boundaries. And I'm like, fuck yeah, like I'm into it. And then when I got there, the experience is more so like the leader of the space had a sheet that she was reading off everything that she had planned for the workshop. And the shares from the participants were very, very, very like surface level. Like I remember even some women were sharing in the third person. No, not third person, second person. Whenever you share something that's a personal experience and you speak in generalizations without any specific details, and you say, you know, when you this happens to you and you do this, and they're talking about themselves, right? It's this like space holding that doesn't open the door to empowered vulnerability because she was just reading off her paper and it was more conceptual, theoretical than actually being inside of an emotionally charged experience. And that happens by expressing, okay, well, what is your experience? How have you come into the embodiment of the medicine that you're sharing, of the experience of what it's like to go from a place of not having XYZ boundaries in place to having XYZ boundaries in place, right? For example, in my life, I went from having my body and my sexual energy being something that was open and accessible for anybody that would give me attention. And that is no longer the case. I have very strong boundaries, both within myself and within my relationship around my sexual energy. If there is not emotional attunement, if there is not a felt sense of safety, if there isn't this like flirtation and attraction and seduction and courtship, then I'm not sharing my sexual energy. No, no entry is granted into my temple. And so, how have I gone through that process? Would be the way that I would teach on boundaries, right? And in doing that, like I might get some shock value from some people and it's vulnerable for myself, but I'm also opening the door to model to people from a frequency and embodied state how to own your story in this way of expression and containment, to move through a process of emotional alchemy and integrating those polarities between our ego's defenses and our soul's gifts and expressions to close these karmic loops, right? And this time, right now that we're inside of, like, holy fuck, can I say, there are some big, big karmic loops that are closing in terms of dynamics around like the patriarchy, around colonialism, around like capitalism. A lot would say we're in a late stage capitalist collapse with a lot that's going on in our economic and political landscape. And okay, I said I was going to keep this focused in on the micro, but your girl loves a big vision conversation of what's going on in the cosmos and the universe and how it's impacting us in a social cultural lens. So I can't help myself. I hope if you're here, you enjoy that too. And this does funnel into our businesses, how we're leading in our relationships. My gosh, like so many women that I talk to are experiencing this like timeline shift rippling into the relationships. Like, if you are actually here on a mission to embody unconditional love, as I am, then you better walk your talk, girly. Right? And there's so much in my both soul lineage and my ancestral lineage that has accumulated these charges inside of my body in the recesses of my psyche and my unconscious that can either cause me to withdraw, want to just like avoid engaging. And I'm the type that doesn't have a problem cutting people off. So usually my nervous system response that is familiar is like a flight, like, okay, well, I'm going to leave. And I know that about myself, right? So these past few years, especially, I've been rooting into my staying power. When my whole body wants to leave, wants to run away in a dynamic where, I don't know, there might be some controlling flavors of like, I want you to present in this way. I want you to adhere to time in this way. I want you to communicate in this way that makes sense to me, that follows a logical flow, that is going to allow my identity structure in a patriarchal context to remain intact and complacent. I'm not gonna do that. So usually I would just leave when these things would come up. I don't want to just leave. I don't want to give up. I want to see what happens when I hold the tension within myself long enough, attuned to the frequency of unconditional love, and being so radically honest with my experience, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, and what I'm desiring, that it's literally going to shift the timeline, not only for myself, not only for my partner, but for everybody that is in my sphere and for everyone that is also attuned to this same frequency through the law of resonance, right? Now we're getting a little esoteric, which I'm here for as well. When there are two like particles, quantum physics, let's ground it into some science, resonating at the same frequency, regardless of the distance of those two particles, one will have an impact on the other. So this is the scientific underpinnings of what I'm always going on about when I'm talking about this collective evolution, right? Why I move through my life in the way that I do with the standards of integrity and regenerative leadership and truth telling and empowered vulnerability and power rooted in unconditional love that I do, right? It's not just for me, it's to shift timelines in, yes, my family lineage, but when a woman liberates herself from patriarchal dynamics, meaning, let's give another example from my family. I am the first woman in my lineage who has used her voice in a male-female pairing to state her desires in a way that is shifting the dynamic rather than just accepting it for what it is and, either distracting or collapsing in on herself, right? My parents exist within a very traditional framework of like the man goes out and makes money, the woman stays at home and cooks and cleans and takes care of the kids and does everything for him. And, he provides for her and she doesn't question his like poor health choices or his like how he manages his time, how he manages his emotions. And it really takes a woman to be like, hey, like, I see that you're not able to be in tune with your own emotions and feel what the heck is going on inside of your own heart. So, like, let's start there so that we can get to a place where we're both operating in this coherence of emotional attunement. How about that, right? This is going to take time. This is going to take staying power. This is going to take rooting into that soul knowing of a frequency state that exceeds what we can see present in our physical reality currently. This is visionary work. We shift timelines by locating the energetic holding patterns, the emotional loops, and the relationship dynamics that are rooted in a specific timeline that may not be coherent with this new earth that we're wanting to create. And the way I do this is really through like a frequency feeling state, because my strongest clair is clairsentience. So I feel my way through the world. For other people, it might be more of a logical understanding. My partner is definitely a lot more like that. So for him, it needs to be like, okay, this makes sense in my mind versus I feel a coherence in my body. For the people in my world, in my work, we are the deep feelers and the healers, maybe so to speak, because we're embodying this evolution. We're not thinking our way, logicking our way through shifting timelines and strategizing, making all of these like high level moves as this genius mastermind. My genius and my people's genius is embodied. It is not in what their mind can contrive for the future. It is how we are showing up and rooting into the truth, the multidimensional truth, and meeting that with unconditional love. That is the power of the unconscious, of the dark feminine, of that transformative space of walking through the void, of not knowing. This is how we shift timelines. So, how do we hold the frequency, right? This is what people frame coaching world or mentorship spaces as the $1,000,000 question. Like, when you are in a reality where, let's say, your relationship dynamic isn't reflecting the one you want, where your community environment isn't rooted in land-based stewardship in the way that you want. Maybe you're still renting a home. When your business is not producing the revenue that you want, how do we hold the frequency of what we're creating without collapsing into the familiar, right? And so just as there's this ancient, avoidant attachment dance that can happen in romantic relationships where someone is like, I want it this way. I don't feel safe if it's not this way. And the other person's like, that's really intense. Like, I'm not really attuned to my feelings. So like I'm gonna dismiss yours and like push you away and like take distance. And there's this like push and pull chase dynamic, right? That can happen. The same thing happens within ourselves. And when we're actually able to look at those different parts of selves that feel more comfortable within a dynamic of financial scarcity within our businesses, within a rental agreement where maybe we don't have as much responsibility for the land that we are stewarding, that we're occupying, where in a relationship where there's a lot of intensity, there's a lot of fire, there's a lot of like fighting for what you want, even though that is not like, logically comfortable. And I know you've already heard this, I'm just repeating it to bring the whole context picture into play here. But those familiar dynamics, those energetic patterns, those emotional loops are our baseline, are our comfort zone. And it's something that is familiar that we collapse back into when we consciously want to be making more money, being more visible, have a more harmonious relationship, be in a community village environment, right? So looking at, okay, well, what is the frequency? What is the emotion? What is the relationship dynamic that is the piece that's there for me to alchemize as fuel to usher in this new paradigm, to make the quantum leap into the new timeline? And this is where I want to introduce the rebirth spiral framework. Okay. This is the journey that I walk the people in my signature one-to-one mentorship space that I have a 3-month trial option and also a year-long, like we're doing life together pathway. So phase 1, we have the awakening. This is where we remember our essence, where we feel really lit up by our mission, like your creativity and your clarity are on fire, and you're connected to that vision. The noise is quieted, the signal returns, right? It's like opening this expansion, this breath of fresh air of possibility. Then we move into the descent. I'm just coming out of this stage of my own rebirth spiral of meeting the shadow. And I love how this journey of the Power Saga has reflected my lived experience. And I do not want to do business any other way than by being real and raw and current in sharing what I'm evolving through in real time. And that's how I work with people too, right? I'm not gonna spend a year going through something and then package that experience and sell that experience. Like, we're on the same playing field here. I'm not like trying to put myself on any pedestal of authority. Okay, meeting the shadow. This happens on our like inner and relational plane, as I was just getting into. And this is where like, okay, clearly where I want to be, this awakening, like expansive energy is not anchored and rooted in every aspect of my life ecosystem. And you feel like, I want to stop self-sabotaging when things start to work. Like when you attract the relationship, when you get the new home space that's like your dream place to live in. when you like acquire land, when you have the children that you've been dreaming of, when you attract an influx of clients and money into your business. Like that's when we come up against a shadow. And this is when we get to confront the fear, the control, the martyrdom, the victim, the savior, all these dynamics that we got into in past episodes. And my role in that is to hold up the quantum mirror of power to anchor that frequency, that nervous system state, to mirror back what is possible while you are traversing what is true here and now, right? Because sometimes our mind plays tricks on us when we go into the underworld and the shadow realms, and it's like heavy and dense, and we're like, oh my God, it's never gonna work. Who am I to like do this big thing? Like, da, da, da. Like maybe I'm not cut out for it. Maybe it's not in me. It's like, no, girl, you're fine. Super valid. Like, let's feel it. Let's be in whatever expression you need to be in. And then come back to the containment of like, oh, right. This is who the fuck I am. This is what I'm doing. Rooting back into that power of unconditional love for self first and foremost. So every trigger gets to become data. Old stories dissolve into embodied truth. It's the integration process. And we start to lean into when we go into the underworld, when we go into the descent, when we meet these shadows, because it becomes part of who we are, right? When I always say that, like, in rebirth, we get to crumble and rise all at once, and the people that I work with are ready to live from a new center of gravity. This is what I mean, right? I remember at the beginning of my like mental health and wellness journey, I was so resistant to booking my first appointments with a therapist because I knew, right? And we always know that this is going to be a long ass journey. Like this is like there's line in the sand moment in my life before this, alcoholism, drug addiction, all of these like chaotic relationships that were literally just rooted in like a couple of sexual exchanges and then I'll never see you again, to, okay, I'm going to build intimacy with myself and actually build a life that I enjoy living. That can be a daunting task, right? So, whenever you're coming up on those edges of resistance, when you're entering into a mentorship space and a contract, that's what you're coming up against. It's like, oh, okay, my frequency is literally anchoring into a new timeline here. And in that process of the descent, our boundaries strengthen. Chaos is no longer driving the ship, hijacking creativity, right? The chaos, the world could be on fire. It is in so many ways. But I am sovereign in choosing the frequency that I want to operate on. I am not in reaction to my environment. I am in co-creation with it. I'm choosing how I'm responding through my creative energy, right? Literally, my whole business is a response to like the fuckery that's going on in the collective, in the like socio-cultural landscape. Okay. And we got phase 3 of the reverse spiral, which is the alchemy. This is where our erotic innocence is reestablished and it's a creative integration. And I'm like following some notes that I have for this framework here. I just love how these synchronicities come up. I was literally creating some posts today, not having gone over any of these notes about like, hey, like who wants to hang out in person and um discuss the process of deconditioning with emotional nuance and like I want to be met at my depth of original innocence and um like just I can't do surface level conversations. Oh my God. I will sometimes, like I'll play the game. But like when I'm in the descent, your girl is a double Scorpio and I have a two line in human design. And if you know, you know. So in this alchemy process, we're getting into the relational context and then also bringing that into our business architecture, right? We are building based on a foundation of genuine relationships and soul resonance, right? And this is so rare, especially in the online space, that when I'm interacting with people in the DMs in this way, I get like a few different responses. One, I get people who just like, and this doesn't happen very much anymore because I'm rooted in this and my frequency isn't attracting these people anymore. But like people who just are not available for genuine connection at all. Like, interesting. Or other people that are like, oh my God, it's so refreshing. Like you're not trying to like come in here and like sell me anything and put your hand down my shirt the first time you meet me, right? It's what getting a cold pitch feels like. And the like desire that we are embodying in this alchemical stage of the rebirth spiral is wanting to feel turned on by your business again. Like it's art, like it is fueling your energy, your life force, like it is an expression of your creativity, not an obligation, like something that you wake up and you dread doing. Like your business feels like that, let's talk. Does not need to be this way. And so many people are operating in that context of like, I know like my family members are in this paradigm and mentality. They're all entrepreneurs and they're all like, need to go to work, gotta go, gotta get it done. Like, doesn't matter if I'm sick, doesn't matter if I'm tired, doesn't matter if I haven't eaten, like business first, profit first over everything. And like, I just can't live that way. The transformation at this stage is where desire becomes your strategy, where you ground into your magnetism and allow that to inform the tangible structure and the strategy, not the other way around. So in this stage, things you can expect are aligned offers that sell with ease because you're literally so lit up by them, with new visibility being seen, celebrated, and sought out, and collaboration opportunities that are magnetic and really rooted in like those soul contracts that we've done this work together to before, right? Forget about the like contract, the agreement that were written that's written or typed. This is destined in so many different timelines that are converging into this here now moment. And that's always true, right? We get to choose to see our reality in that way and operate from that place. Okay, two more phases of the rebirth spiral. We have the expansion. So we've awakened, we've descended, we've alchemized, and now this is where, the rebirth spiral is this process of expansion and contraction. This is all right, we've transmuted some shit, we've shifted some shit around in relationships and business. Now we're hopping on the magic carpet ride, and we are moving, we're flowing, we're on a frequency of momentum where you're getting to build and grow in that village structure without losing your soul, with freedom, with pleasure. And you learn to ride the waves of emotion, waves of expansion and contraction without trying to overwork yourself, overgive to prove your worth. That leads to burnout. And the systems and structures that you have in place to support the architecture of your business are resonating in coherence, in harmony with your soul, right? This is so felt. Like you can't fake this shit. This is where things are like streamlining, where there's consistency, and where there's a work-life integration that your work's actually nourishing your relationships and vice versa. Then we root that into embodiment. This is sovereign leadership. This is the new norm, right? You've gone through the opening, the descent, the alchemy, the expansion, and then it's like stabilizing at a new baseline. This is where it's an identity level shift, right? This happens like not in 3 months. So this is for my 1 year tracks on the rebirth spiral. And this happens around like, I feel like there's this pattern in mentorship, and I want to speak to this. I don't know if you've noticed this in your own business, but I always think of it as sacred geometry, where every like 3, 6, 9, and 12 months, there's this like full circle that comes around this like it's a loop around the spiral. And this like embodiment stage comes in about like just about the year mark, where it's no longer something that you're like consciously trying to establish competency in. It is unconsciously integrated in who you are. It's your way of being, it's your lifestyle, right? And so this is where you feel like bone deep, like the woman that your mission requires. It integrates through all the layers of your life ecosystem and love and power and truth. It's merging, right? You're no longer chasing alignment, you are aligned. And this is when your embodied authority, your ability to be an author of, is present in all the spaces that you move through, where you can just turn the camera on without planning what you're going to say, and you confidently know that you're so embodied in what you do and what you're teaching and how you lead spaces that you can just be spontaneous off the cuff. When clients and team and community are operating in this coherent state of frequency with you, because you're so anchored in that, you're not reacting to all of the chaos and unforeseen events that are happening in your environment, and decisions are being made from intuition and clarity and your own organic template and rhythm, not from external pressures. Okay, I didn't lie, but I left out a part. The last stage of the rebirth spiral that I work within is the legacy work. This is, we've journeyed together for a year, you've become a whole new person, you rebirthed your reality on, I'm very hot, holy. I thought I would keep my hair down because it's fun and beachy and like a little dirty and like kind of wild, but I'm like, holy, okay. It's okay, it's okay. Maybe I should, oh, have water. Cheers. Okay, this is your legacy work. This is where who you are ripples beyond your sphere of influence, your like offers, your own world that you've curated. It's where it ripples into the collective, where you're getting public recognition for your thought leadership, where you're getting speaking opportunities, you're getting asked to speak on people's stages and be published and to collaborate on bigger projects, maybe the land-based projects of stewardship and eco residencies. And this comes from a place of like deep, deep, deep knowing that you were made for this. You're at peace in your expansion without trying to prove anything, where you can have impact and it doesn't deplete you, where there isn't this like bracing of like, oh my God, this is going to ask so much of me. Like, this is going to like create disturbances in my relationship. It's like, no, you're totally at coherence with who you are and your mission and how it presents itself. You're able to be contained in your expression as well as seen in it on the global scale. If you're someone that is looking for like a quick fix or a cash injection, um, or like hacks and strategies to get a lot of people in your world and scale your business as fast as possible, like you're, I can just confidently say you're not here, but just so we're all on the same page. This is not what we're doing here. We're rewiring identity, leadership, nervous system capacity, reality from the inside out. And to do that, looping it back into the theme of this podcast, it is essential that we root into our staying power. That when those triggers, those frictions, those tensions come up, or we feel overwhelmed in our relationship, in our mentorship space, we're receiving a lot of projections, we're transmitting a lot of projections. There's a lot of like chaos in the dynamic. There's like unmet expectations, disappointment. We'll get into that deeper in a second here. And like your nervous system and like is just like, I can't do this. Your identity is maxed out. This is the expansion edge. When you root into your staying power, you don't say, oh, like, need a new mentor, need a new relationship, need a new business model, right? When you stay in that potent space of overwhelm, and shift the frequency, shift the relationship dynamic, shift how you're showing up because you've integrated those charges, those different aspects of self that want to root into the familiar because it's comfortable. That is when you move from this oscillation of should I stay, should I go? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is this going to change? Can I wait this out? Like, how long can I hold that tension? Beyond fight of like, you're wrong, I'm right. This is like not how I want to create my business. This is not how I want to lead a relationship, build a family, like XYZ things. To, okay, this is what I want. This is how I'm creating it. And I'm rooting into my grounded, sovereign discernment of what is for me and what isn't. And it's not to say that it's like wrong to be in the familiar or in the should I stay, should I go, in the fight part once you've left something that you've discerned that is actually not for you. It's all part of the spiral. It's all part of the process, right? What I'm bringing forward here is a framework to recognize and locate yourself where you're at in your process so that you can sharpen your discernment from, okay, is this my nervous system doing the thing that it does to try to keep me in a familiar hell over an unknown heaven? Or is this actually like a turning point, a pivot point where I leave this space, where I leave this relationship because it is no longer serving my growth and evolution. It is no longer growing with me, right? There has to be that coherence, that reciprocity, that like we're on the same page of maybe we're not exactly where we want to be in this moment, but we have a shared vision for where we're going and we're taking accountability for our part and what's required of us to get there. And it's interesting how we can make up like laundry lists of excuses, both for other people and for ourselves. So notice like at these specific points in time, at the 3, at the 6, 9, 12 months of a certain relationship, experience, program, container of like check in with yourself. Be like, okay, what has shifted and what is true now? What do I desire? How do I want to get there? And what is the fuel that is present here for me to alchemize that creates the momentum for that transformation and creation of a new reality? And that takes some radical honesty, right? Not only with other people, but honesty starts with ourselves of like, what part are we playing in this dynamic of what are the emotions that are present within ourselves that are creating these loops, that are creating the same results? Like, what do we need to shift? Right? A lot of times it can be very easy to identify what needs to shift within another person. But can we bring that focus, that attention, that energy of unconditional love back onto ourselves? And when we do that, when we're radically honest with what parts, what young little girl that wants to be swooped up and saved in all of her troubles, who wants to just land in the perfect relationship, in the perfect community, in the perfect business model without going through the struggle and the alchemy and the descent of building that. And I want to say that this culture of honesty is not mainstream by design. Because when we're honest, then there aren't these unconscious holes in our energy field that get to be hooked into and exploited and harvested. There's a thick persona between us and the people that we're interacting with that we get to manipulate perception and outcomes so that we can feel safe in that familiarity or in the vulnerability of the evolution, right? There's so many people, like I said, that operate in this way of like, okay, this is what I've moved through, and now like, let me guide you through that thing versus like, this is what I'm moving through. Let's walk together. It's a lot more vulnerable because there is no control. It's a full surrendered state to like, I don't know what's gonna happen. We're walking in the void together. And for me, yes, of course it's uncomfortable, but I think that's also exciting. I think that's where like the juice of life lives, in the unknown, in the void, in the mystery, in the immeasurable. Hmm. And because I have this orientation, I am allowing myself to be misunderstood, to face disapproval, and to disappoint others. Actually, I'm inviting that just by the simple nature of who I am in my original essence. I'm here to disrupt thousands of years and trillions of dollars of propaganda that 99.999% are not only operating within, but are unconsciously operating within under the illusion that that is who they are, identity, that there isn't another way. This is how things are built. This is how businesses work. Just the same as those systems and structures and ways of organizing societies and ways of relating were created thousands of years ago, we get to be at that choice point of creating new organizations, new relationship dynamics, new business structures and systems at any point, right? It's a matter of being in coherence in a field of belief where other people are willing to operate collectively, collaboratively, co-creatively in ways that they are going to be misunderstood and face disapproval and disappoint others as well. And that's gonna, again, like I talk about this all the time, but I think it's so important to bring forward that that is going to throw us for a loop. It is going to trigger our basic need for belonging, for connection, for love, for approval, for validation, right? The like structure of our human psyche are dependent on being understood and approved of. And pleasing others, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't need to play by the rules, play by the psychological structures that we were born into. As a species, as a society, as a culture, we are in a constant state of evolution. And it is each of our sovereign choice to decide if we're going to resist that evolution. So we see a lot in like older generations, or if we're going to be active participants inside of it. I have no interest on building success inside of the current paradigm of business because I know for me in my lifetime, that will become obsolete. Think about the people that like were working on a computer that was like massive, like the size of the room. That doesn't exist anymore. And that's like a tangible technology piece, but it can also extend into the ways that industry operates, that business models are structured, that relationships are structured, and the way that we lead and organize communities and societies, right? When you can root into your radical honesty and express and contain in the face of being misunderstood, disapproved of, and disappointing others, that is how we build a new earth. Not some etheric, airy fairy, like quantum akashic experience. Like, I love all those things too. And they mean nothing without the full spectrum of the rebirth spiral, all the way to legacy, where we are creating the new normal for the next generation. At this point in our evolution of society, like humans have become so resourced and intelligent, where there's kind of like a lot of diminishing returns that we're reaching with the current systems and structures that exist. And so the next frontier of creativity is actually rebuilding the architecture that we're operating, the context that we're operating inside of. And that's what I'm here for. That is also you. Let's connect and see what is in store for our collaborative power and directed energy towards leading this change. I want to weave in this like example of staying power within a business model context, where when we're in this space of the unknown, we're walking through the void, it can be very tempting to get like shiny object syndrome or like shiny ideas and syndrome. Because as visionaries, we have about like 10,000 different ideas every day. And staying power applies to our business structure as we're building a new business structure and model as well for like a 2-year period. In order to build momentum and establish a solid foundation on genuine connection and soul resonance, lock yourself into business model jail for 2 years. See what happens. Okay, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to collect a lot of data. You're going to alchemize through so many cycles. At the end of those 2 years, see like, okay, is this business model working? Or do I need to make some refinements, right? It's not about like scrapping the whole thing and creating something new again, because then we're kind of building in quicksand, right? There's nothing that is being like erected into these solid pillars. And with that, again, looping back to stay in something that doesn't have external results of it working for a 2-year period, you're gonna have to be hella misunderstood. You're gonna be very facing a lot of disapproval, especially from those who have success in the modern contemporary paradigm of business scaling. And you're going to disappoint your family and the people that you are in closest relationships with if they don't understand, which is okay. You need to be okay with that to create something new and find your people that do understand you, that are approving of you walking in the dark and are not disappointed by you branching off and not meeting their expectations of how you're going to operate, of how you're going to relate, of how you're going to build. The modern business context is built on you have a solution for someone's problem that they want to pay you for. And I don't subscribe to that because I don't believe fundamentally at like the core of my being, right? There's parts of me that might still, that's where my deconditioning and alchemy work lies. that there is a problem, there's no problem. Right? There's things that are uncomfortable, there's tensions, there's chaos, there's destruction, um there's hatred, there's evil, there's all these things, right? Fundamentally, what it comes down to is a gap in perceived and shared reality. What's going to bridge that gap? Rather than creating a problem and implanting a solution in the gap, it's like, can we explore the gap, the void of the unknown? What is there? Can we figure that out instead of trying to put a proven strategy on top of it so you can get a result that is like, do you even want that result? Does it align with your values of what you're trying to create? Or someone just ascribed that desire to you because it's profitable to them and gets to leverage your worthiness wound and the scarcity and urgency that is existing within the overculture. Oh, I fucking heated, y'all. It is a lot more comfortable and familiar to operate within a context of problem, solution, result, certainty over the process than to venture into co-creating from the void of the unknown. It's a lot easier of a sell. People have a psychological need for certainty. I am choosing to address that need for certainty with genuine connection and soul resonance. Soul resonance, you know automatically if you're attuned to it. Genuine connection takes time. It takes staying power. It takes curious exploration and empowered vulnerability. And this is what a lot of people do not give any weight to, do not ascribe value to. That's okay, because I do, and I know other people do. And even if I am only appealing to 1% of 1% of the population who wants to build and operate in the way that I do, that's still 820,000 people, right? I operate in a global market. There is no scarcity. And I hope that popped that bubble for you. All right. I am so heated, right? There's still a lot of charge. There's still a lot of fight energy. And I'm not making myself wrong for that. I'm not making that a problem. This is the fuel. This is the alchemical process in real time of creating new earth business architecture. Forget the business, new earth architecture, right? It starts with our relationships. That's why the foundation of new earth business is relationships. Okay. What happens in relationships? Especially when someone has consciously or unconsciously been placed on a pedestal, has a cult-like following of raving fans. There's often a moment of the hero-villain flip. When someone was like, this grand star in the sky scaling to the moon. Oh my God, they're my hero. I'm going to make so much money under their guidance and leadership and in their community. And they're just the greatest ever. Have you heard about this person and the work that they're doing? Oh my God, they've made $1 million this month. Like, how incredible are they? Like, get into their offer. Like, come be in this energy with me. And like, that can be all great and true. And if you are here to create something different that does not subscribe to somebody else's playbook, there will be a moment when there is the hero villain flip, where the person that you put onto the pedestal is going to be misunderstood disapproved by, and disappoint you. And then they can become the villain in your story, where there's so much of this rage, this grief, this charge of like these psychological structures crumbling gets projected at them because it's all fucking uncomfortable to hold the tension of something familiar no longer existing in your reality, right? This is the reality that we're all moving through right now, whether we want to be conscious of it or not, whether you're in mentorship spaces or not, right? The collective energy is transforming. What was familiar before 2020 no longer exists. There's a lot more uncertainty in the collective, in political structures, economic structures, environmental structures, business structures, like all of it, that people are trying to cling to this certainty that just doesn't exist. And so who used to be the hero, a lot of times become the villain. Have we ever fucking seen this in the Epstein files? Like, your boy who you're meditating with, Deepak, was in there, right? And there's so many other examples of this. One like relational example I want to share to ground this into an experience that I've had, that it's like I saw it for what it was. And so I could like kind of like detach myself and just laugh along at this playing out while still, having compassion and being in connection with the person that was involved in this dynamic. So I used to live in a community home with like 8 other entrepreneurs, and we'd often have gathering where like people that I never met before would suddenly be in my living room. And at one point, I was like, let's play. So I would enter the space and just ask outlandish, not outlandish, just like questions to establish genuine connection and determine soul resonance, right? So people would be talking about, this person in specific was talking about their job as oh no, they were talking about how much they valued like environmental restoration and like peace and things like this. Beautiful values, but like I was like, are these values or are these aspirations? And so I asked a deepening question of like, well, like what do you do for work? And how does this like bridge into what you do for work? And I could see some people be like like peeking out from the kitchen, being like, what's she saying? Because it's this wait, what moment of like, oh, I didn't expect her to ask that. That wasn't in the social script of like, how long have you been doing that for? Like, da 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 da, all these things. Um, and so she was caught off guard and she like really thought about it and then came up with like a very concrete, genuine example of like how that value of hers is rooted into her work. And she felt really good about herself in that moment and really connected to me. And she's like, wow, like you're a very curious person. Like, how did you get like that? And it's like, I think everybody's curious. And she's like, just you. And I was like, well, I think everybody starts curious and it's a matter of getting back to it or allowing the conditions that are placed on top of it to solidify as your identity. And she's like, what the fuck? Who are you? Um, so then later in the evening, we were playing this game, and there was a question that came up around like family. I was like, all right, I want to like really get to know what this person is made of. And so I asked a deepening question about her family dynamic, and that struck a chord that she did not like. And I very quickly went from like on this pedestal of like, wow, who is this woman? She makes me feel so seen and held and understood and like expansive and resonant, right? And then it was like, whoa, who the fuck is this woman to ask me this intrusive question? I don't know who she is. Like, right? And it happens so quickly when unspoken expectations for a lot of the social scripts or we're coming back to bridge it into a business context, or the basic bitch business playbook, are not met, it leads to a disappointment. And why I share this section of this episode with you is to, rather than keep things ambiguous in these unspoken expectations in your relationships and your business, is to clearly communicate and embody standards and boundaries, and not like rigidly as like, you stay over here, this is my boundary, like blah blah blah, like you're not meeting my standards, blah 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 blah, whatever, right? It's an agreement between two parties, between two people, to operate within this architecture of relationship, of business. And like any good agreement or boundaries or standards, like there's corrective actions. Like if the standard, if the boundary isn't met, then what happens? Not as a like punishment, but as a way to maintain the ecosystem. And I've actually developed my own framework of communication that I call the four phoenixes of the new earth. And this is an adaptation of Gottman's four negative communication patterns. And if you're familiar with the Gottman Institute, his research, I think it's a man, is there to predict what causes relationships to break down if they're not addressed. And so I'm like, wow, like, okay, yeah, like I want to be aware of things like criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. But I also don't want to be looking for a problem to solve. Bitch. So let's Uno flip it and reverse it to the four positive communication patterns that predict joy-fueled relating. And I developed this during a like challenge, I guess you could call it, short burst offer that I held called the Alchemy of Relating, that literally transformed my baseline to operate in joy. And I will be running that one again very soon because it is so needed, and I was still stretching my capacity to hold people in spaces at that point. I think I had 3 people. There's very minimal participation. And my last challenge that I held after this one, Born to be Wild, I had 55 people in the space and so many active participants. So very excited to like give this the space and recognition and impact that it deserves. So what are the four phoenixes of positive communication, you might ask? Well, first one is compassionate clarity. You're saying what you mean and you're meaning what you say clearly, directly, with compassion for the other person and yourself. Okay? Rather than criticizing, you're not doing this right. It's like, hey, I really value this. This is what I desire. I'm seeing this. There's a process of walking yourself through emotional alchemy. Intimacy and alchemy. Interesting. Alchemy to integrate that charge so that you can show up in this way, right? 2, we have the Phoenix of Sacred Appreciation. Antidote to contempt. Contempt being you're just like pissed off that someone is a certain way and you're like resenting them for it. What if you can shift your perspective away from looking at problems, because you will find them, to looking for areas where people are showing up and appreciating the fuck out of them in those areas so that they get that hit of genuine oxytocin from connection and being seen. So they want to show up and continue to receive that. Not from a place of like pleasing you, not from a place of avoiding confrontation, but from a place of like genuine reciprocity. Okay, radical responsibility. This is where rather than deflecting when you feel exposed for a pattern, for a part of yourself that wants to stay in the basement of the exiles, if you're familiar with IFS, of your unconscious. We try to defend to deflect. Take responsibility for your part in the dynamic. Right? Doesn't mean the other person doesn't have a part too, but if you're taking radical responsibility and they're taking radical responsibility, get to meet each other in that together. And the final one, the phoenix of emotional attunement. This is our antidote to stonewalling, which is the #1 predictor of relationships falling apart. And stonewalling, it says it in the name, it's basically just walking away and being like, I'm not dealing with this, I'm not engaging with this. Sometimes we need a break. That is okay. A pause, the beautiful tool in communication. To use a pause effectively, communicate that you need a pause and the time frame in which you will return to the conversation. I would recommend 10 to 20 minutes so you can regulate yourself at least like 10%, right? To come back with emotional attunement, which is the last one. Emotional attunement meaning I know what I'm feeling and I know what you're feeling. And there's a shared resonance field being created around our relational space because we are operating in attunement to each other's emotions. Ta-da! I swear, sometimes, like, why have I not been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize yet? So the intention with these 4 phoenixes of positive communication patterns is to move through a rupturous experience, to come to that rapture, that expansion, and meet every conflict with repair, right? Repair, repair, repair. I can't stress it enough. In any relationship, a parent, child, mentor, mentee, romantic partners, friendship, whatever it is, when there's a moment of rupture, it's not the end. Root into your staying power and go for that repair. There's this like stat that I heard at one point when it's a parenting research that I think it's like 70% of the parent-child relationship is determined by how well you're able to prepare. And over like a longitudinal study, when someone is consistently repairing, even if it's like 20 years after the fact, it has positive correlation and predictive value to the quality of a trusting, loving relationship longitudinally, right? Don't underestimate repair. Other parts of that, love becomes a daily practice. Joy is the natural byproduct of 2 sovereign beings choosing each other again and again and again. This is staying power. Okay, we're coming into the wrap up, y'all. I feel like I've been talking for a long ass time. Maybe the saga is gonna have another part again. I didn't realize I'd have so much to say on staying power. Essentially, again, relationships, foundation of everything, right? Of family, of business, of our life ecosystem. Old world business, old world patriarchy, colonialism, capitalism, all the other isms are placing profit above relationships. I'm not aware of it, but I might be doing that in some capacities, right? So I don't want to say I'm perfect in this. It is a seed of awareness to water and grow into a beautiful plant of new earth architecture, right? We're building a village and we are growing a garden of relationships. And in those, we're calibrating to mutual flourishing rather than win-lose dynamics are like fucking compromise bullshit. I took a course in university when I was studying abroad in Australia, actually, and it was about negotiation, intercultural negotiation tactics. And there's like four quadrants of different like ways that different cultures are going to negotiate. And there's like win, lose, there's compromise, where each person has a bit of concession to meet in the middle. And there's I'm forgetting some of them, whatever. This isn't that important. The important part is to calibrate to mutual flourishing, where you're collaborating on creating new possible outcomes through win-win-win solutions. You win, the other person wins, and the collective wins, right? Remembering that point of that law of resonance when we're coming into new solutions, win-win-win within two people, that creates new solutions for other people that are operating on that timeline, on that frequency. Okay. This is the part that I struggle with. Respecting rhythm and pace. I am actively deconditioning urgency and scarcity. What that looks like in my relationship is not projecting my pace of evolution onto other people, and also not internalizing other people's pace of evolution on myself. I've had a big inquiry on like, what is respect? It's really interesting because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And some people believe that respect is blind compliance and obedience. And other people, I had a thread about this, would say that respect is like yielding. I was like, yielding. What does that mean? And it's really just giving someone the space to operate at their own pace and rhythm with the trust that you are moving in the same direction, but it might just be at different times. And can you be okay with that? Can you root into your staying power with your trust and faith that your vision and their vision are aligned? And so it is inevitable that your desires will be fulfilled. Not all your desires are going to be fulfilled and met instantaneously, especially if you're someone like me that wants to create entirely new worlds of possibility for the next generation. How long can you hold the tension for someone else to come into coherence without compromising through creating coherence? And it starts with that coherence within yourself, right? There's going to be parts of you that are very ambitious and want to accomplish so much all right now. And there are parts of you that are scared, that are, sabotaging or procrastinating or whatever it is. And we cannot create a more beautiful and true future by continuing to exile those parts of ourselves that are scared and putting the parts of ourselves that have the highest ambition on a pedestal and hiding that from anyone, like in your business, in your relationships, in your family. Can you let yourself be so exposed and root into the tension that that creates within yourself and within your relationship dynamics that is the driving force of recalibrating to a new set point of coherence? This is where the anxious and avoidance dance gets really interesting. If you're anxious, you're going to grasp onto needing it to be now. If you're avoiding, be like, I'm just going to distance myself from everybody until it is what I want it to be. Neither of them are serving you or your people. I'm saying that to myself because I can fall into both of those camps at certain times and seasons. As a recap, staying means allowing people to evolve at different speeds, not demanding instant alignment, letting relationships stretch instead of snap, building cyclically and rhythmically as the consciousness of nature does. Shout out, I don't know what that was, to the best mentor. Finally, being misunderstood without fleeing. Staying does not mean tolerating misalignment and mistreatment. It means deciding whether the soil can regenerate and contribute the nutrients for that to happen. I want to say that part again. Staying does not mean tolerating misalignment and mistreatment. It means deciding whether the soil can regenerate and contributing the nutrients for that to happen. Power doesn't need to be taken. It needs to be porously held in collaboration.